Sometimes in life, you can clearly sense that something is shifting, even when nothing dramatic has actually happened. The rhythm of your days stays the same. The people around you look no different. Yet inside, the balance has begun to tremble, ever so slightly. For Libra, this moment doesn't arrive with noise or chaos. It comes quietly, like a slow, steady gaze, inviting you to ask yourself, what in my life is real, and what is only here because of habit, because of someone else's need to hold on? The values you once set aside begin to speak again. The relationships you believed were safe start revealing silences that feel unfamiliar. And somewhere in the distance, a significant opportunity begins to take shape. Not just to change your direction, but to change the way you see yourself. When the scale begins to tilt, nothing can remain exactly as it was. Libra may have sensed this much earlier than they realized, even before they could find the words for it. A feeling so subtle, so indistinct, like standing at a crossroads, without yet seeing where either road leads. On the outside, life appears unchanged. Daily routines move on as usual. Schedules stay on track. Relationships keep their familiar shape. But inside, something has begun to slow down. Not out of fear, but because the mind no longer wants to keep running on old momentum. This is the moment when many Libras realize how far they have traveled just to keep everything balanced. You learn to listen to others before listening to yourself. You became skilled at smoothing over tension, hiding personal desires, sometimes accepting less, simply so everything could remain calm. Yet, eventually, that calm stops feeling safe. It grows so quiet that you begin to wonder whether you are still living in alignment with what truly matters to you. The turning point does not arrive through a dramatic event. It shows up in the smallest details. An offhand comment that lingers longer than expected. A silence that stretches just a bit too long. An old joy that no longer excites you the way it once did. None of these moments promise anything definite, but together, they are enough to make you pause and look more closely at your inner world. And when you pause long enough, what was once unclear begins to take shape. You may start noticing which connections nourish you and which ones exist mostly out of habit. You may realize that not every sacrifice equals love, and not every act of staying carries meaning. Instead of judging, Libra tends to observe. You watch with your natural calm, allowing emotions to settle, letting truth surface. In its own time, at its own pace. What stands out during this phase is that you stop rushing to decide. You begin to understand that some answers do not come from action, but from honesty with yourself. You allow space for every feeling, even those once considered inconvenient. Hesitation, a quiet sadness, a sense of being slightly unanchored. None of these appear without purpose. They are not here to weaken you, but to clarify what truly deserves your attention. This shift also invites you to reassess your own worth, not to compare, not to prove anything, but to recognize that real balance does not come from pleasing everyone around you. It comes from no longer abandoning yourself in the choices that matter most. As this becomes clearer, you may feel both lighter and uncertain. Relieved because you are finally allowing yourself to be honest. Uncertain because the road ahead has not fully revealed itself. And perhaps that is the deeper meaning of this moment. Not to promise a specific outcome, but to remind Libra that change does not always need to be loud. Sometimes, all it takes is enough stillness to listen, and life quietly readjusts the scale in its own way. What is beginning to form does not ask for blind faith. It only asks that you remain present, that you stay with yourself, and that you be willing to move forward. When you feel just a little more ready than you were yesterday. And then, Within that quiet presence, something else begins to reveal itself. Not in a loud or showy way, but softly, like a glint of gold that only appears when the light hits at just the right angle. What many people might call luck, for Libra, in this moment, may simply be a deeper awareness of personal worth. Great value does not always sit inside a bank account or a specific number. Sometimes it arrives as an offer that makes you pause longer than usual, an opportunity that quietly confirms your abilities have been noticed, even when you never asked to be seen. Or it may show up as a very clear inner knowing that you deserve a different place, a different way of living, one where you no longer have to reshape yourself to fit the expectations of others. During this phase, Libra may notice a subtle shift in the way you respond to the world. Things you once nodded along with now create a moment of stillness, not to resist, but to ask whether that compromise is still necessary. You begin to understand that maintaining harmony by sacrificing yourself is no longer the only option. You may not yet have words for what you are seeking, but you can feel a clear movement within, as if the scale has been reset along a different axis. That axis no longer turns around pleasing others. It turns toward respect. Respect for your time, respect for your energy, and most importantly, respect for your honest inner response. This sense of value may also appear as delayed recognition. When someone finally acknowledges what you have quietly contributed for so long. When efforts once taken for granted are suddenly named. Yet instead of reaching for it right away, Libra tends to watch more carefully now. You are no longer swept up by short-lived excitement. You want to know whether this opportunity allows you to remain yourself or whether it simply asks you to keep playing a familiar role. What is striking is that when you stand in the right place for yourself, the world around you begins to recalibrate. What no longer fits becomes clear. What aligns more naturally moves closer on its own. Not because you are trying to attract anything, but because you have stopped pushing away your true value. In this moment, Libra learns a deeply human lesson. That fullness does not always come from adding more, but from no longer making yourself smaller. That success is not only about achievement, but about the calm clarity you feel when looking at what you are building, and that sometimes good fortune only begins to unfold when you stop questioning whether you are worthy of it. This great value does not appear to test how quickly you can seize it. It appears to see whether you are ready to honor yourself. And in that very private stillness, Libra may realize that a new path does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be honest, aligned, and spacious enough that you never have to turn away from yourself. One more time, as your inner values slowly fall into their rightful place, the landscape of your relationships begins to shift quietly as well. There is no announcement, no obvious conflict. Yet through the way people show up and the way they respond, you can feel the difference. Some move closer in a very gentle way. They do not need to hold on. They do not ask too much. They are simply present, with respect, and with a willingness to listen. At the same time, other connections begin to reveal a different tone. Attention becomes more concentrated than necessary. Simple check-ins carry an undercurrent of tension. Eyes that were once calm now hold a trace of unease. Not exactly wrong, but enough to make you realize that not every bond is rooted in clear, open-hearted emotion. Libra is naturally sensitive to subtle shifts. You sense these changes not through logic, but through feeling. A fleeting heaviness during conversation, an unnamed emptiness after familiar encounters. These signals do not ask you to draw conclusions. They simply invite you to look more closely at the intentions behind each presence in your life. During this phase, you may notice yourself explaining less, no longer trying to clarify everything. To avoid misunderstanding, you allow truth to surface on its own, through time, through behavior. Those who genuinely value you will not make you question yourself. Those who come from fear of loss may unintentionally create pressure, even without meaning to. What matters is that Libra no longer rushes to label. You do not define things as right or wrong, love or not love. You simply notice how each connection feels. Some allow you to breathe more deeply, to feel expansive, more at ease within yourself. Others cause you to contract, as though you are holding a role that no longer fits. Truth in relationships rarely arrives as a confession. It lives in the pauses between sentences, in how someone responds when you set a boundary, in whether they feel joy or unease. As you continue to grow, these moments do not require heavy analysis. They speak for themselves. And perhaps the most meaningful thing for Libra right now is allowing clarity without creating harm. You do not leave in anger. You do not stay out of pity. You learn to remain still, to observe, and to let each relationship reveal its true place in your life. In that quiet space, you begin to understand that not everyone who stays truly understands you, and not everyone who loosens their grip cares any less. As this distinction becomes clearer, Libra enters a deeper stage of maturity, one where external validation matters less, and attention turns inward toward what feels honest, steady, and undeniably real. As each connection slowly settles into its rightful place, Libra begins to notice a very different feeling. Not excitement, not anxiety, a lightness. Lightness in thought, lightness in breath, even lightness in the quiet moments, shared beside another person. You no longer feel the need to explain who you are. You no longer adjust your emotions to fit someone else's expectations. Those who truly value you rarely arrive with grand promises. They show up through quiet steadiness, a sense of ease. When you don't respond right away, a calm acceptance. When you devote time to your work, to your private dreams, to your inner world. With them, you are not forced to choose between freedom and closeness. Both exist together, naturally. Libra is deeply attuned to energy. You can feel when someone stays near, not to possess, but simply to walk alongside you. Their attention does not weigh you down. It feels like open space, wide enough to let your guard down, gentle enough that you do not need protection. There is no sense of being watched, no pressure to prove yourself, no questions that make you doubt who you are. What stands out is that this person never rushes to pull you toward them. They understand that everyone moves at their own rhythm. When you advance, they are not afraid of being left behind. When you slow down, they do not push. Their presence feels like a soft anchor, not something you lean on forever, but something that reminds you you can stand firmly on your own. Beside someone like this, Libra often becomes more honest. You speak your thoughts without fear of judgment. You share concerns without worrying they will be seen as weakness. Most importantly, you no longer sacrifice essential parts of yourself to preserve closeness. Connection is no longer a negotiation. It becomes a space where growth happens together. The person who truly loves you may not always understand every hidden thought, yet they respect what they do not understand. They do not attempt to control. They do not try to reshape you into an image they prefer. They see who you are becoming, not just who you once were. And within that gaze, there is a quiet trust, steady, and unshaken. Libra also begins to realize that sincere love does not create confusion. It does not leave you constantly questioning your place in someone else's heart. It does not require you to read between lines or decode unclear signals. Clarity does not come from declarations. It comes from a sense of safety that endures over time. Within this connection, support arrives in subtle ways, not through pressure, but through belief in your ability to walk your own path. When you explore a new direction, there is no doubt cast upon you. When you change, there is no attempt to hold you to an old version. You are allowed to grow in your own way. And because of that, the relationship grows as well. Perhaps the most human lesson Libra learns during this phase is that genuine love does not disturb your balance. It restores harmony from within. No noise, no drama, just the quiet relief of being yourself without hiding. And in that peace, you begin to understand that you deserve connections that lift you up, not ones that slowly wear you down. Alongside the connections that allow you to breathe more freely, there is another kind of presence, one that often reveals itself only when you begin stepping beyond familiar ground. This person does not disappear as you change. Instead, they show up more. Closeness increases. Questions multiply. Their gaze grows tense, not because of deep care, but because an unspoken unease is quietly expanding inside them. This type of attachment rarely begins with anything negative. It grows out of familiarity, out of the sense of safety you once shared together. But when you stop standing still, when your direction begins to shift, their emotional tone changes as well. Gestures that once felt warm start to carry an edge of inspection. Reminders come wrapped in subtle tests. Concern hides behind the mask of protection. You can feel it clearly through your body. A slight tightening. When your phone lights up, shorter breaths. During conversations that seem ordinary on the surface. There is no obvious conflict, yet the ease you once felt is no longer there. This state does not need a name, because the sensation itself speaks louder than words. Those who struggle to let go often do not realize that they are holding on. In their mind, it feels like care, like a desire to protect, like fear of losing what is familiar. But that fear causes them to see you as something that might slip away at any moment. And from there, attention slowly turns into invisible pressure, even when no harm is intended. Around this kind of energy, you may notice yourself growing smaller, not because anyone forces you to, but because you do not want to unsettle them. You weigh every word, every decision, every step forward. Your growth, without meaning to, becomes threatening to them. And within that prolonged quiet, you begin drifting away from your own sense of inner freedom. What makes this especially difficult is how familiar it feels. It creates hesitation, even guilt, when you consider creating distance. Yet deep down, you know that staying only to soothe another person's fear cannot last. Closeness without respect for personal space slowly becomes a burden for both sides. At this stage, what is needed is not confrontation and not immediate separation. What matters most is awareness, recognizing which feelings allow you to expand and which ones cause you to contract. Noticing when attention feels warming and when it leaves you drained. This discernment does not require explanation to anyone else except yourself. You may feel compassion for this person, knowing they are acting from a very human fear. But empathy does not mean continuing to abandon yourself. Each person has their own journey to learn how to stand steady without clinging. And you are not responsible for staying behind. To teach that lesson, in your own quiet space, You begin to understand that healthy affection does not require you to prove loyalty by stopping your movement. It does not ask you to slow down so someone else can keep up. When attachment causes you to lose your inner direction, that is an invitation to listen more deeply, not to judge, but to protect your own wholeness. And perhaps it is in this phase that you learn something essential, that not every attempt to hold on comes from love. Sometimes what keeps another person attached is the emptiness they have not yet faced within themselves. Seeing this does not make you colder. It simply brings clarity about where you belong and where you no longer need to remain. After all of those quiet observations, Libra arrives at a moment that feels deeply personal, not loud, not dramatic, yet clear enough for you to know that you can no longer move forward the way you once did. Not because the old path was wrong, but because it has completed its purpose. What once fit no longer reaches the depth you now carry within. This decision does not appear as a sharp, immediate choice. It feels more like ripeness, a knowing that you have lived enough to stop clinging to what is familiar, simply out of fear of change. You look back at what you once tried to hold on to, not with regret, but with understanding. Some chapters exist to teach you how to listen to others, and some arrive to guide you back to yourself. Libra begins to see that what is more deserving does not have to be grand or dazzling. Sometimes it is simply a way of living that moves in rhythm with your inner world, a space that allows growth without asking permission, a connection that does not demand explanations for who you are becoming. These things do not appear, while you remain in places that no longer reflect the person you are evolving into. This choice does not ask you to abandon everything. It only invites you to reorder what matters most. What nourishes your growth? What slowly drains you over time? When you answer these questions honestly, the response often comes quietly. No outside approval needed. No advice required. Just a sense of calm. When you imagine a new direction, even if you cannot yet see every step ahead, you may find yourself moving more slowly, but each step feels steadier, no longer matching someone else's pace, no longer measuring your progress against anyone else's timeline. You allow yourself to move at a speed that feels true, trusting that clarity does not come from rushing, but from being fully present with each small choice. When you choose honesty with yourself, the most meaningful reward is not found in external outcomes. It lives inside the feeling of no longer hiding, a quiet clarity, a place where you understand where you stand and why you are there. This version of you does not need to prove strength. It shows itself through calmness, through the ability to say no when necessary, through the absence of fear around being misunderstood while living truthfully. Libra also comes to realize that freedom does not mean leaving everything behind. It means no longer being ruled by the fear of loss. When that fear loosens its grip, what truly aligns with you naturally remains. What no longer can walk with you slowly falls away without resentment. Everything unfolds in a very human way, ordinary, quiet, and precisely on time. And when this journey draws to a close, there is no applause, no declaration, only a clear inner knowing that you have entered a different chapter, one where you trust your intuition more deeply, one where you allow yourself to receive what truly matches your worth, one where you no longer ask whether you deserve it, because somewhere inside, you have known the answer for a long time. Perhaps this is the greatest gift of this turning point. Not what you hold in the world outside, but how firmly you stand within yourself. And from that place, the road ahead, even if not fully visible yet, no longer causes the same hesitation it once did.